Hey everyone, I'm going to read chapter 9 of Momo today. Chapter 9 is called The Trial. The great moment had come and gone. It was over, and not a single grown-up had appeared. The children's demonstration had passed almost unnoticed by the very people it was aimed at. All their efforts had been in vain. The big red sun was already sinking into a sea of purple cloud, so low in the sky that its rays lit only the topmost tier of steps in the amphitheater, where so many hundreds of children had been waiting for so long. No cheerful hum of voices broke the sad and disconsolate silence. The shadows were lengthening fast. It would soon be dark, and the children began to shiver in the chill evening air. Somewhere in the distance, a church clock struck 8. Doubt gave way to certainty. The whole scheme had been a complete fiasco. One or two children got up and drifted off. Others followed suit. None of them said a word. Their disappointment was too great. Eventually, Paolo came over to Momo and said, "It's no use waiting any longer. No one will turn up now. Good night." And he walked off too. Franco was the next to leave. "It's hopeless," he said. "We can't count on the grown-ups, we know that now. I never did trust them anyway. As far as I'm concerned, they can stew in their own juice from now on." More and more children left. It was dark by the time the last of them gave up and went home, leaving Momo alone with Guido and Beppo. The old road sweeper stood up. "Are you going too?" Momo asked. "I've got to," Beppo told her with a sigh. "I'm on night duty." "Night duty?" "Yes, unloading garbage at the municipal dump. I'm due there in half an hour." "But it's Sunday. Besides, you've never had to do that before." "No, but we've been told to report there. They say it's only temporary. There's too much garbage to handle, apparently. Shortage of staff and so on." "What a shame," said Momo. I'd have liked you to stay a while." "Yes, I don't want to go myself, but there it is. I've got to." And Beppo mounted his squeaky old bicycle and pedaled off into the darkness. Guido was whistling a soft and melancholy tune. He could whistle very sweetly, and Momo was listening with pleasure when he suddenly broke off. "Heavens!" he exclaimed. "I must go too. Today's when I start my new job. Night watchman, didn't I tell you?" I'd forgotten the time. Momo just stared at him and said nothing. "So our plan didn't work out," he went on. "Never mind, Momo. It didn't work out the way I hoped either, but it was fun all the same. Tremendous fun." When Momo still said nothing, he stroked her hair soothingly and added, "Don't take it so hard, Momo. Everything will look quite different in the morning. We'll just have to come up with a new idea. A new game, eh?" "It wasn't a game," Momo said in a muffled voice. Guido stood up. "Look, I know how you feel, but we'll talk about it tomorrow, okay? I have to go now. I'm late enough as it is. Anyway, it's time you went to bed." And he walked off whistling his melancholy tune. So Momo remained sitting forlornly in the great stone bowl of the amphitheater. Clouds had veiled the sky and blotted out the stars. A peculiar breeze had sprung up, light but persistent and singularly cold. If breezes can be said to have a color, this one was gray. Far away beyond the outskirts of the city loomed the massive municipal garbage dump. It was a veritable mountain of ash, cinders, broken glass and china, tin cans, plastic containers, old mattresses, cardboard cartons, and countless other objects discarded by the city's inhabitants, all waiting to be fed, bit by bit, into huge incinerators. Beppo and his workmates toiled for hours, shoveling garbage out of a long line of trucks. The trucks crept forward, headlights blazing, but the more they emptied, the longer the line became. "Faster!" the foreman kept shouting. "Hurry it up, or we'll never be through." They didn't finish the job till midnight, by which time Beppo's shirt was clinging to his back. Being older than the rest and not the most robust of men, he flopped down warily on an upturned plastic bucket and struggled to get his breath back. "Hey, Beppo," one of his workmates called. "We're off home now. Coming?" In a minute, wheezed Beppo. He clasped one hand to his aching chest. Feeling all right, old man? Called someone else. I'm fine, Beppo called back. Just taking a little breather, that's all. Don't wait for me. Okay, said the others. Good night. And off they went. It was quiet when they'd gone, except for an occasional rustle and squeak from rats scrabbling in the garbage. Beppo pillowed his head on his folded arms and dozed off. He didn't know how long he'd been asleep when he was roused by a gust of cold air. One look was enough to jolt him awake in an instant. All over the huge mound of garbage stood gray figures attired in smart gray suits and gray bowler hats, steel gray briefcases in their hands, and small gray cigars in their mouths. They were gazing fixedly, silently, at the summit of the mound. There, ensconced on a sort of magistrate's bench, sat three men identical to the others in every respect. Beppo was frightened for a moment. He had no business to be there. He sensed that instinctively, and the prospect of discovery scared him. Very soon, however, he realized that the army of gray figures had eyes for no one but the three-man tribunal. Either they had failed to notice him at all, or they had mistaken him for some discarded object. Whatever the explanation, he resolved to keep as still as a mouse. Then the silence was broken by a voice from the judge's bench. The Supreme Court is now in session, announced the central figure. Call agent number BLW 553C. The cry was repeated further down the slope and repeated again some distance away, like an echo. Threading his way slowly through the crowd and up the mound of garbage came a man in gray, distinguishable from his fellows only by the pallor of his face, which was almost white. At last he reached the tribunal. You are agent number BLW 553C? Asked the man in the center. I am. How long have you been employed by the time-saving bank? Ever since I came into existence, Your Honor. That goes without saying. Kindly spare us such irrelevancies. When did you come into existence? 11 years, 3 months, 6 days, 8 hours, 32 minutes, and, at this precise moment, 18 seconds ago. Oddly enough, although this exchange was being conducted a long way off and in low, monotonous voices, Beppo didn't miss a word of it. Are you aware, the man in the center went on, that a substantial number of children paraded through the streets today with placards and banners, and that they even entertained the outrageous notion of inviting the whole city to attend a briefing on our activities? The senior inquisitor pursued remorselessly. It's a mystery to me, Your Honor, said the agent. If I may venture a personal observation, however, I would urge the Supreme Court not to take this incident more seriously than it deserves. It was a piece of childish nonsense, that's all. I would also urge the court to bear in mind that we easily managed to scotch the scheduled meeting by leaving people no time to attend it. Even had we failed to do so, however, I'm confident that everyone would have dismissed the children's information as a cock-and-bull story. In my opinion, we would have done better to let the meeting go ahead, because that would... Defendant, the judge broke in sharply, do you realize where you are? The agent wilted. Yes, he whispered. This is no human court, the judge continued. You are being tried by your own kind. Lying to us is futile, you know that perfectly well, so why bother to try? It's an occupational habit, the agent stammered. It is for this court to decide how seriously to take the children's intentions. However, I need hardly remind you that children present a greater threat to our work than anyone or anything else. I know, the agent conceded meekly. Children, declared the judge, are our natural enemies. But for them, mankind would have been completely in our power long ago. Adults are far easier to turn into time savers. That's why one of our most sacred commandments states, leave the children till last. Are you familiar with that commandment, defendant? Yes, indeed, Your Honor, said the agent, puffing hard at his cigar. It was a peculiar fact that, despite the solemnity of the occasion, All present, judges, defendant, and spectators, were smoking incessantly. And yet, the judge retorted, we have incontrovertible proof that one of us, I repeat, one of us, not only got into conversation with the child, but betrayed us. Do you happen to know who that certain person was? Agent number BLW553C wilted still more. It was me, Your Honor. And why did you break our most sacred commandment? Because the child in question had been seriously impeding our work by turning people against us. I had the interests of the time-saving bank at heart. My intentions were of the best. Your intentions don't concern us, the judge said icily. Results are all that count here, and the result of your unauthorized action has been to gain us no time and acquaint a child with some of our most vital secrets. Do you admit that? The agent hung his head. I do, he whispered. So you plead guilty? Yes, Your Honor, but I would draw the court's attention to an extenuating circumstance. I was genuinely bewitched, lured into betraying us by the way the child listened to me. I can't explain how it happened, but I swear that's the way it was. Your excuses are irrelevant and immaterial. This court takes no account of extenuating circumstances. The law is quite categorical on this point and allows of no exceptions. However, we shall certainly devote some attention to this unusual child. What is its name? Momo, Your Honor. Male or female? She's a girl. Place of residence? The ruined amphitheater. Very well, said the judge, who had recorded all these details in his notebook. You may rest assured, defendant, that this child will never harm us again. We shall neutralize her by every available means. Let that thought console you, now that sentence is about to be passed and carried out. The agent began to tremble. What is the sentence? He whispered. The three judges put their heads together and conferred in an undertone. Then they nodded, and their spokesman turned to face the prisoner again. Agent number BLW553C, having pleaded guilty to a charge of high treason, this court unanimously sentences him to pay the penalty prescribed by law. He is to be deprived of all time forthwith. Mercy, mercy, shrieked the agent, but his steel-gray briefcase and small cigar had already been snatched away by two gray figures standing beside him. And then a very strange thing happened. No sooner had the condemned man lost his cigar than he started to become more and more transparent. His screams grew fainter, too, as he stood there with his head in his hands, dissolving into thin air. The last that could be seen of him was a little flurry of ash eddying in the breeze, but that soon vanished, too. Silently, the men in gray dispersed, judges and spectators alike. Once the darkness had swallowed them up, the sole reminder of their presence was a chill gray wind that swirled around the dismal and deserted garbage dump. Beppo continued to sit spellbound on his upturned basket, staring at the spot where the condemned man had been standing. He felt as if his limbs had turned to ice and were only just beginning to thaw. The men in gray existed. He had seen them for himself. At about the same time, the distant church clock had already struck 12, Momo was sitting on the steps of the amphitheater. She was waiting. For what? She didn't know, but some instinct had dissuaded her from going to bed. All of a sudden, something lightly brushed against her bare foot. Peering hard, for it was very dark, she saw a big tortoise looking up at her. Its mouth seemed to curve in a mysterious smile, and there was such a friendly light in its shrewd black eyes that Momo felt it was about to speak. She bent down and tickled it under the chin. "Who might you be?" she said softly. "Nice of you to come and keep me company, tortoise, even if nobody else will. What can I do for you?" Momo wasn't sure whether she'd failed to notice them before, or whether they'd only just appeared, but she suddenly spotted some letters on the tortoise's back. They were faintly luminous and seemed to follow the natural patterns on its shell. "Follow me," she slowly deciphered. Astonished, she sat up with a jerk. "Do you mean me?" she asked. But the tortoise had already set off. After a few steps, it paused and looked back. "It really does mean me," Momo said to herself. She got up and went over to the creature. "Keep going," she told it softly. "I'm right behind you." And step by step she followed the tortoise as it slowly, very slowly, led her out of the amphitheater and headed for the city. Oh, that's the end of chapter 9. Thanks.